Welcome to Business in Japan Television. We all know that stress is a killer. In many cases, we feel anxious because we're overworked, drowning in a sea of tasks that could be done by other people. Smart managers know how to delegate, reducing their own anxiety by letting other people share the workload. Joining us to talk about this is Dr. Greg Story, President of Dale Carnegie Japan. Greg, thanks once again for coming in.
Thank you, Mike.
Greg, how difficult is it to delegate effectively?
Actually, it's not difficult, but we make it difficult for ourselves by not following some basics. The first basic is you've got to actually trust your people. But that's not something that comes at the beginning. It's something that you need to train them to be able to take the delegated tasks and do them effectively. The fatal words we hear all the time from leaders: it'd be faster if I do it myself. But actually, you wind up doing everything. So part of it is we have things we can do which are very simple to do if we know what we need to do. And often people just don't know what they need to do.
But what's the difference between delegation and just dumping work off onto other people?
Yeah, well, as I said before, this is something sudden, or you're already overwhelmed and you realize you've got to get someone else to help you. So suddenly you're passing off a project or whatever to someone. And that is dumping. You just come along, here, do this, and then you walk away. Better approach. First of all, we need to think, right, out of the team, who is the most capable, suitable, appropriate person for this particular task? And we'll know who that is pretty easily. We'll see in our team who's there. Having made that choice, the second thing we need to do is to explain to them why this is good for them.
So it sounds like communication is the key to effective delegation. Can you also give us some other strategic tips along those lines?
Yeah, well, there are stages of delegation. The one is often we get dumping or dropping, so sort of the negative parts, if we don't get that first part right. But after that, you're trying to distribute the work around. So it's not concentrated in you or in one person in your team. Then you're looking for people to basically, if you can get to that stage, to delegate to them and then deputize to them so that they can become you. Ideally, all of us want a whole bunch of people out there in the organization who can do what we do, but even perhaps preferably do it better than we can. But to get to that point, you've got to actually give them the job and let go. There's an old story about Lee Iacocca. He made this great comment. Businessmen, sort of, A-type personalities would talk about, I never take a holiday. And you think, well, how ridiculous, He made this comment, how ridiculous, because we've got you running $1 billion company, and are you telling me you're so disorganized that you haven't got people developed in your organization to take over from you, so you can't take a holiday? This sort of approach. Again, we get locked into these ideas about, I have to do everything. If you're going to be effective, you need everybody in your team to be effective. You need to be doing high value work, more strategic work. They have to be educated and be coached to take over work from you that they can then learn and grow in their careers. The balance of those two things is very, very powerful in organizations. We need to see more of that leverage being applied.
Well, that leads me to my next question. You talk about those type A personalities. Many managers are workaholics, and in fact, that's what makes them so good, or that's what makes their companies so successful. How do you get them to break out of that mindset?
It's a dangerous construct because you've got too much concentrated in one or two or three people. What happens if they die of a heart attack? What happens if they have a breakdown health-wise and they're out of the scene for months to recuperate? There's a particular business leader I know here. He's like that. He's a total workaholic, work. Then he has to stop and take a sabbatical for months to recover because he can't get the balance right. So the danger to your health is enormous if you don't get this off your plate and start developing others to become leaders in your company. So the first thing is your primary is your health, but the risk for the company is also very great. You don't want to have all your eggs in a very small number of baskets. You want to have, if anything goes wrong, there are other people here who are also capable, who can step in, pick it up and keep going with it.
Now we're here in Japan, obviously, where Japanese companies are famous for working as a group and sharing the workload across a small amount of people or a large amount of people. Is there something that Western business leaders, Western managers can learn from that Japanese group concept in terms of delegation?
Well, what I notice about Japanese companies is because they tend to have a fairly longer time span around employee period in the company, they are more willing to give younger people more responsibility earlier. And so I think with the Western companies, we're worried about the next quarter's results, right? I've got to get it done now. Can't, coach anybody. I've got to pump it out now. That is not happening in those Western companies as much as maybe where Japanese companies don't have that same shareholder, stakeholder pressure that Western companies have, can take a longer term viewpoint, are prepared to slowly develop their people over time, give them scalable projects that build their confidence, build their capability. We still have all those pressures on the share market and shareholder value, etc. But I think we also have a balance of invest in your people. Don't do it all yourself. Spread some of those tasks around and see them as an opportunity to build the organization, and we get a richer, better, more capable, more balanced, powerful organization as a result.
Greg, thanks for joining us once again.
Thank you very much, Mike.
That's Dr. Greg Story, president of Dale Carnegie Japan. Thank you for watching Business in Japan Television.